already done so. Use the studio stuff on their website at haps.tv. Go to your account. Subscribe to get notified when I go live. And that means that you'll know when you can ignore me, see? And then, of course, support my work on Haps. I don't know what work I'm doing, but hey. All right, so I'm going to talk about the um, Derek Chauvin case, the trial day 13. They're on a 20-minute break right now, and I've been watching since I woke up, so excuse me if I look a little sleepy. I probably am. Hey, yo! So this is what I've learned. The defense has had a witness up, and forgive me if I can't remember the doctor's name, but it's a dude that works with dead people, okay? He's a forensic kind of guy. So, yesterday, the defense's witness said that George Floyd was laying comfortably on the ground. I'm sorry, but it didn't look too comfortable to me. And then today, defense is trying to say, well, lots of people sleep on their stomach, don't they, in the prone position, and they're okay? Well, yeah, because nobody's on top of them, holding them down. If you're on a bed, for instance, you're going to go into the mattress, right? Big deal. People sleep sideways, upside down, whatever. I sleep upside down occasionally when my husband starts having these moments when he's flinging his arms around and he's got Popeye-sized arms. So, well, I'll tell you what happens, and I've seen from multiple views of, police cameras, etc. Like, what did Officer Chang mean, the park police dude, when he walked up to one of the officers that was dealing with the scene at the time and asked him if he was, code red or something, which means that if his camera was still streaming live. What is that? Why would you even ask that question unless you're about to say something or maybe a little dirty? I don't know, right? You got something to hide? Why would you ask that question? Like, do you think that perhaps the cop was in the wrong somehow? And I'm sorry. My brother, I'm not sorry that he's my brother, but my brother taught instruction for MMA to police officers in our own community. And I don't remember my brother ever saying, yeah, you got to pin them down. That's the right thing to do. Hold them down by their neck and between this where the spine meets where the neck is and the trapezius muscle, right? But there's a few people, and this doctor says that, oh, well, up to 23% of somebody's weight can be accounted for when they are pressing down on the back of somebody. 23%. But this guy never used any percentages like that in the past when he spoke about the very same subject. He said if there are several officers on top of them, right? Several officers on top of them, it's going to have them a hard time to breathe. I don't care who you are. And then they tried to say, well, look in a football situation, right? One person's on the bottom of that mess, but how come they're not dead? Well, for starters, when it happens, people are pretty fast to get up off of that person. There's a lot of times when that person on the bottom suffers a concussion because of how they're hit and brought down to the ground and then with the amount of weight on them. But they're checked out. Sometimes they're passed out because they can't get any breath. I mean, with football, using football as an example is kind of stupid because in football, they know not to do that. And they know that if they do pile on, somebody, that you got to get off quick and you got to make sure that person's okay. I mean, that's just the way it is. And, you know, to use that as an example, or to use the thing, oh, well, what if you're, say, okay, I've gone swimming, I've gone to a swimming pool, and usually, if it's an indoor pool, maybe even outdoor, it's either got asphalt or it's got like a tarry kind of spongy thing. Yes, I've lied down, face down, onto concrete in a prone position. Did I feel that I couldn't breathe? No, I didn't. I felt perfectly fine. If I had a whole bunch of people, or even two people, standing or sitting or kneeling on my shoulders, my my rib cage, my diaphragm, so that I couldn't get air in and out, it wouldn't end well. And then they try to say, well, George Floyd had fentanyl and he had methamphetamine in his system. And then now they just said this, their witness, defense witness, just said, well, that could maybe not have caused the interaction that happened because fentanyl, as I've said before, I was put on it years ago when I first became disabled because I suffer severe pain all the time. So they gave me these things called fentanyl patches. And when I put that on, I was in la la land. I was loopy. I was sleepy. I couldn't get motivated. I just didn't feel good on that medication. And that was me personally. And my doctor wanted to up it to 25. I forget what it is, measurements, but a 25 patch. And I basically said no because I just felt so out of control. Like I felt like I was out of my body. I didn't feel good. I felt really sleepy. I didn't have energy. I didn't want to do nothing. Now, if Mr. Floyd took that medication orally, which means that he swallowed a pill, he swallowed something that had methamphetamine in it, he would have metabolic stuff in his system showing that reaction to that medication. And that was so low, it was almost nothing. Like, who knows how long ago that he did take that? Because it's not to say that he didn't take medication like that. He did. That's not an issue. And in fact, in the autopsy, the contents of his stomach were looked at, and there was no pill or pill residue found, or any, such thing in his stomach contents, which means that he didn't take it. And yes, there were pills found in the car, but I'll tell you what, Mr. Hill, or is his name Hill? The other guy, I can't remember his name now. The other person who was in the vehicle on the front passenger side, he he gave his Fifth Amendment rights because he didn't want to chance that the prosecution could use what he says now in charges against him in the future, because there were pills found in the car. There were pills, but that guy threw the pills in there. As he was getting out of the car, he was witness doing that. So nobody's saying there wasn't any pills there. And then they're saying that Mr. Floyd, um, Shawanda Hill said Mr. Floyd had been falling asleep. Both he and the male passenger said, oh, he was falling asleep. We couldn't keep him awake. The problem lies in the fact that if you're trying to say, well, he was super high on fentanyl, where is the fentanyl in his system? How come he had a very small amount of fentanyl in his system? He didn't have a huge amount of fentanyl or methamphetamine in his system. That to me is being used as a tool to um, cause some issues. But what I look at when I'm listening to are what the witnesses are saying, what the prosecution's saying, the rebuttal questions, the actual questions, um, the facts of the case, looking at what they're presenting, both sides, and I'm still not swayed. I still think at the least it's got to be manslaughter, at the least. But in this case, this guy knew that Mr. Floyd had passed out. He knew that he had no pulse. And both times he responded with, uh-huh. You can clearly hear him. The witnesses have all identified Mr. Chauvin as a person saying, uh-huh. So in this case, from what I'm watching so far and the evidence they presented, I see that what Mr. Chauvin did, and they tried to say by using other witnesses, do you think that, a crowd of people who could be yelling things at you could cause you to be distracted from your objective, which is to keep, somebody down? And, you know, the thing is how can police be that easily distracted? And why would they become distracted when there was three other officers there at the same time? One of which was doing crowd control, which was not necessary. The worst thing that happened was somebody stepped off the curb to get a little closer to see what was going on with Mr. Floyd on the ground. And then he was told by Officer Tao, I believe it was, to get back on the sidewalk, which he immediately did. He complied. And yet the defense is trying to say that there was basically a very unruly crowd, that the police were concerned for their own safety because of how loud this crowd was. And the guy was asked, how many people do you consider to be a crowd? He said two. So you're telling me two people are standing on a street. They're yelling, screaming, calling the cops the worst thing they could ever do. I mean, I'm sorry, but I thought cops had bigger, stronger skin, and I know they do. But they're being presented as if they're very thin-skinned and can be easily distracted by the people around them. Now, if it was like during the so-called riots that happened, you know, and you're like at the Capitol building, for instance, as a cop, yeah, you're going to be concerned. There's like thousands and thousands of people there, and they're angry, and you're just in their way, you know. But the cops then, they're doing their job to the best that they can and facing down those people because that's their job. And over here, I don't know what it's like in the US, but I'll tell you over here in Canada, I don't know any police officers that would get offended if they're called any name, seriously, because they're supposed to be like a duck and let all of those things just roll right off their back. They're just words. Actions are different, but words? Come on. Saying things like, you're killing him, check his pulse. Those are really scary words to say. But I see this case as something that people should actually look at the evidence. It's the same thing that happened in Trayvon Martin case. People jump to 1,000,001 different conclusions. But if you watch the court case from start to finish, like I unfortunately do because I have no life, you hear and see things that are factual and not just something that people have thought up or have an idea or they think about a hypothesis. You can't see, the problem is if it's not a fact is a proven. But if you have a theory is not a fact, and therefore it's not proven. Until it's proven, then it becomes fact. But if it's not proven, like all these conspiracy theories people have, But I'll tell you, in this case, clearly the wall of blue, as they called it, um, is starting to listen. And I don't mean that they're listening really well and things are going to change as of right now, today, and the police are all going to be good. And there are never, ever going to be all good police officers any more than there's going to be all good any profession in the world. Never. You can't control who a person is. Only they can control themselves. But regarding Dante Wright and the police officer who had shot him, I have big questions. Big, 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 big questions for that woman. And one of the questions I would have is this. The taser feels completely different than your gun. The taser is on the other side of your belt, your tool belt, for lack of a better word. So how can you say that you didn't know that you grabbed your gun instead of a taser? And this guy was pulled over, because his registration had expired. And then they noticed that he had an air freshener hanging down from, his front rearview mirror. And for that, he lost his life. And that woman had resigned, as well as the police chief has also resigned now. It's another thing where people are angry. I mean, this isn't going to go away until people start dealing with this. And in this case, it's George Floyd, and look, Breonna Taylor was at home sleeping. At home, they thought that in a state where you're allowed to protect your home is your castle. Her boyfriend grabbed his gun when people were like trying to break down the door. They didn't announce themselves. And only one neighbor said, "Oh, yeah, well, now that I think about it, I do remember them telling them that they were coming in." And yet every other person in that building did not hear that. And it's coincidental to me, it's funny that the family that there was two families that had stray bullets go into their living spaces, one above and one right beside. One family was black, nothing happened, no compensation, etc. One family is white, compensation, you know, we're looking into it, etc., etc. Breonna Taylor's dead, nobody cares. I'm tired of hearing this crap because I know the police can be better than that. I've had law enforcement in my family. I've had military in my family. Um, I know people in general are good people. And so you cannot say, well, all the police are this because this is what a few of them have done. And in the case of George Floyd, what happened to him, just because he used drugs, just because he was, who know. The bottom line is cops did not know who he was before that day. Derek Chauvin didn't know what his history was before that day. So his history, what he did before that day, doesn't matter. What matters is what happened. And what happened was a man was put down on the ground, and even though he was screaming out, saying he couldn't breathe, didn't get the help that he should have received. He was not put in the prone position when he started saying that he couldn't breathe. He was trying, they keep saying, well, look at his right arm is moving, and why, he was fighting. He wasn't fighting. He was trying to get on his side into the prone position so that he could breathe. And defense witness tried to say, I believe it was yesterday, that Mr. Floyd was pinned up against the vehicle and therefore was not going to be able to be placed on the prone position, which is not true either. And I have another question about this case. The fluid that is seen under the vehicle, looking like it's coming from around somewhere around George Floyd. They are now trying, as of today, to say that George Floyd suffered carbon monoxide poisoning because the vehicle was running, and as evidence, there was fluid dripping out of the exhaust, and therefore the vehicle was running. There's no proof the vehicle was running. And George Floyd didn't have carbon dioxide in his system. What he did have was produced because of a lack of oxygen getting to where it needed to go. He had nowhere to go with his breathing. I don't know anybody that could be put in that position and would probably survive that. And one of the witnesses tried to say, well, if you were a bigger person, an obese person, and you had somebody come and do the same thing, that you would probably die because you can't breathe because you're obese. You're going to die because you can't get air into your lungs, not because you're obese. Maybe you're going to die from that eventually, but not today. So I'm watching these, and I think it's probably started back. They were going to break for 20 minutes. But as soon as they get back on, I'm going to be watching. But as you can see, I've been watching this all day. And so, whatever your belief is, keep an open mind and try to think about not George Floyd. You just try to think about it from a standpoint where you're listening to the evidence. Hi, how you doing? Think about it from the evidence that you're hearing if you were a juror member. Keep your mind open. Listen to everything. But unlike a juror, we don't have to keep our opinion to ourselves. And we can express our opinion about what's going on and what we see and what's happened in the past. And I like to base my thoughts on facts rather than theories or ideas or what ifs. And I don't want to say, well, you know what? This guy had a criminal history and he did this, he did that, he was a drug user, blah, 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 blah. Because the police didn't know that day, and it has nothing to do with the case. Excuse me. And it's not COVID, because I got my first COVID shot, and no, it was not Johnson & Johnson. Moderna. So, sorry. But I think that as a society, we jump to conclusions very easily because the media, let's face it, let's be honest, the media is there to make money. That's their sole purpose in life, is to make money. If they can't make money by selling stories, by getting the viewers to watch because they know this is the most exciting news show, they're not going to last for very long. And right now, media is fighting because people are not watching their cable channels anymore, and they're looking online, and unfortunately they're getting stories that are sensationalized to the point that I've been drawn into some of these things. Oh, Meghan Markle this, and Harry this and I'm like, what? Is that really true? Does Meghan Markle really think that way? No, they don't know. They just think. I love it when people say an inside source. Well, if you're an inside source, why don't you share who you are? Yeah. The thing is, you have to look at, as a juror, sit back and listen. You have to listen. You have to look. The most important thing is to zip your mouth and just listen to what they're saying. See what they're presenting. And then from your own perspective, and in this case, thank goodness for video, there's the police videos, there's bystander videos, there's, I don't know what you call them, closed caption, whatever, there's the videos that are on the street and stuff. Lots of videos. But the proof stands in the pudding about what did the autopsy show? What happened? And is that okay to put somebody into a position like that? Like the witness said this morning, you can put people, and I said this already before, in the prone position. A lot of COVID patients who are very sick are put in the prone position. And that's to get them to expand their lungs, to be able to build up their lungs again, to be able to breathe, right? But they don't have people kneeling on them. You know what I'm saying? It's like they don't have anybody kneeling on them. And that is something that is used to, to help those patients who cannot breathe. It's almost a last resort. But with me, I'm not easily swayed. I'm not. Hey, maybe Derek Chauvin didn't do this. Maybe it was somebody else that looked a whole lot like him. Maybe the videos are all completely wrong. Maybe his own police officers telling him he's not. I don't think he's breathing, and then I think he's passing out. Uh, maybe it just wasn't that important. Maybe it didn't really matter. Maybe it didn't happen. I mean, hey, who knows? Maybe the police cams were messed with, But the proof is in the pudding. You look at what the video is. You listen to what the testimony is of experts in the field of that position and putting people in that position. And is it okay to put somebody in that position? And you're supposed to put them, if they're resisting, and you get them into handcuffs, you get them on the ground until they're no longer resisting, and then you put them on their side. By, I don't know how many minutes it was, Mr. Floyd was no longer resisting. He was just saying, I can't breathe, please. I mean, there was the older gentleman who kept saying, just give up, get in the car, get in the car. How could he said, I'm trying, but I can't. If you listen, I mean, it's kind of heartbreaking when you listen to it. My goodness. And then you listen to his little girl, too, George Floyd's daughter. Oh my God. She's crying. And I'm like, oh my God, because this proves the point. People are all about choosing sides, but you don't want to know that these people had family, that they mattered to people in their life. He had a mother who passed away. He had a father. He had family members who cared about him, friends who cared about him. He was cared about. He was more than what the media and the defense is trying to make him look like. And when Trayvon Martin was killed by George Zimmerman, they started talking about, well, Trayvon wasn't a good guy. Hey, Quincy, Trayvon wasn't a good guy, and he had been caught and suspended at school for having marijuana on him, and so that made him a bad kid. You know how many kids smoke marijuana? And the kicker is these people who are going on and on and on about, oh, these kids today smoking marijuana. Guess what? Every generation has probably smoked marijuana since maybe the 60s. So don't give me that crap like it's just a new thing that kids are going to be smoking marijuana, because that's going to always happen, you know? But they tried to pin that on Trayvon and say, you know, he's dead, killed by George Zimmerman and his gun because he was a vigilante trying to be the neighborhood watch, but really just a vigilante, you know? I think I think he thought he was king shit of Turd Island for the day, excuse my language, but this the cases, the way the defense are presenting, you know, in Trayvon Martin's case, they brought that up about his, well, you know, he wasn't a perfect kid, and Young was tall, and yeah, he was tall, but what could he have done about that? He's 17, guilty of being black and tall, wearing a hoodie, and drinking iced tea while eating Skittles. That's why George Zimmerman killed him, for all those reasons. You know, and even though George Zimmerman ended up being acquitted by that jury, which I fully think it should have been called as a mistrial after the fact, because the next day, and even before that, there was one of the jurors that was involved with a mainstream publishing company who had agreed that they were going to publish her cookbook because she was a member of the jury for George Zimmerman. And when that news broke, like the next day, when the news broke about that, people bombarded the publishing company because you shouldn't make money off of somebody else's death. That just seems really gauche. And especially kind of says to me, well, they didn't listen. They were just there for the notoriety. They were there so they could get something after the trial was over. But the deal ended up being taken down because the company said, no, 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 we don't want this publicity. They, you know, they say even bad publicity is good publicity. Not this much bad publicity. No, it's not. So now, fast forward to this case and to all of the, I mean, people said, well, you know, when Trayvon Martin, when that happened, Sanford, Florida, and I drove through Sanford, Florida when I was there on purpose, hoping that I would see George Zimmerman driving around because he likes to drive that highway. Now, excuse me, I don't know it, 95 maybe, I don't know what it's called, but likes to drive it. According to the 911 calls he made, saying he was following somebody who had was in an argument with an elderly person in their vehicle and had struck them. On the phone with the cops, on a cell phone, on the highway, going, I think it's 60 miles per hour. And then that person, of course, starts speeding up and trying to get away because they realize that this person in a truck is watching them, and they leave. And the guy follows them along the highway as he's on the phone with the police saying that, you know, this happened, and there was assault, and this is the highway, and it was ridiculous. And then the woman and elderly gentleman, when they were spoken to by the police, that the guy said that she didn't do anything to me, and we were having a heated discussion, but it was about something, you know, I don't know what it was about, but he said it wasn't to do with her hitting me or hurting me in any way. He said that never happened. So cop said, okay. Then another time he calls 911, same highway, says that there's an erratic driver who is speeding along the highway and cutting in and out of traffic. And so on the 911 call, the police officer asked him, what are you doing? And he says, I'm following them. See, that was his go-to. What are you doing? The dispatch asked. I'm following him. That means that he's saying that this person is going fast, speeding down the highway, cutting in and out of traffic, and is dangerous. And he was following him, doing the exact same thing while on a cell phone. So therefore, there's no way that this guy could have been paying attention to the other people around him. But he used that same MO when he killed Trayvon Martin. Police officer said in the very beginning, "What are you doing, sir?" "I'm following him." "We don't need you to do that, sir. Stay in your vehicle." And even then, in that video, you could, or sorry, the dispatch call, you can hear the click of the gun. So I formed my opinions. Oh, it's back. Okay, see you later.